Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and today I'm working through day 11 of By the Well for God's famous last words. To start off this page, I wanted to create this floral frame impresslet. This is from Tim Holtz and Sizzix. I am sending that through my Big Shot machine in some watercolor paper. Now this impresslet will cut it and emboss it at the same time, which is great. I do suggest spraying it with water twice on both sides if you're using watercolor paper. This will help the paper not crack, and it'll also help you get a more smooth transition through the embossing folder. So here I decided to grab some tans and browns of Distress Oxides, and I'm just making sure that I get this whole frame covered before I put it through my Minc machine. Now this is Heidi Swapp toner. I'm putting it down on a non-stick mat and rolling it. You're waiting for a certain consistency. You don't want it to be too liquidy or it'll run everywhere. I had a problem with one of them, but it's okay because nothing has to be perfect here. But you also want it to be tacky but not too dry. So I end up laying down a little bit more so I can get more coverage on this frame. Now this is just going to add a little bit of foiling to the frame and antique it even more. Now obviously this toner is only brayered on the high points of the impresslet, and so you're only going to get those high points that are foiled. But I'm putting that on and through my Minc machine twice. I just like to do it twice to make sure that it gets everything. And then when I take it out of this cover sheet, I'm going to just set it aside and let it cool down a little bit before I peel it off. But this is the look that you get. I want it to look a little bit more antiqued, so I'm adding a little bit more brown and some black to it. And I haven't used the black set too much Distress Oxide, but I really like the look it gives with the antique look I was going for. I am sending it back through the impresslet little embossing folder because when you send it through the Minc machine, it does flatten it a little bit, so that helps to bring back all the high points. So I put that frame to the side as well as some other ephemera pieces I knew I wanted to use with this page. And I grabbed this book plate from the Last Will and Testament stamp set, and I'm stamping that down with some Versa fine ink so I can get all the details, and then I will be adding some gold embossing powder on it. Now once it is embossed, I am going to add some Distress Oxides just by brushing them on, but it wasn't bold enough for me, so I kept the interior of the book plate, just the Distress Oxides. But then I'm actually going to go grab my Daniel Smith watercolors from the kit and also a couple of them that I had on hand, and I'm going to color in the outer edges of this book plate to make a more bold statement. Now to watercolor the outer edges of this book plate, I decided I would start off with French Ochre, which is the color that came on this paint card in the kit. And so I'm going to make sure that the outer edges of this book plate are solidly filled in before I start adding some other watercolors in. After that, I decided to grab some other browns that were Daniel Smith as well, and so I grabbed Transparent Brown Oxide and also Italian Burnt Sienna. Both of these colors worked excellently with this kit and just gave this book plate more kind of definition and kind of antiqued it a little bit more. Now I did send this book plate through my typewriter. I probably should have waited for it to dry a little bit more, but I really wanted to add some notes and I was a little impatient in waiting, and so the paper was still a little bit damp, and so therefore I didn't really want to take the typewriter ink that well. But with a lot of effort and kind of slamming on those typewriter keys, it did take the ink, and so that worked out fine. I just didn't want to heat it again with my heat tool because that embossing powder would have kind of lost its metallicness and lost its luster, and so that's why I didn't reheat it. But all in all, it ended up turning out okay. And the notes I put on it was, God will be with us for the sake of his name, which was a really big point from Judy on day 11th of this devotional. Now I did take out these lace dies from Sizzix and Tim Holtz as well, and I want a really detailed one, and I grabbed this paper that I love that came in the paper pack, and it turns out really cool, but it does take a while to get all the little holes out. So I did grab my new tools from Hobby Captain to kind of get all those little holes punched through. But before I did that, I wanted to grab the varsity letters because I thought this cluster needed a little bit extra. And so I grabbed that black flocked paper and created an S for Samuel. And then I ended up using that same paper from the paper pack to make the outline. And you'll see what I do with it in a second. Now, like I said before, taking out all these holes from the lace die does take a while. And usually I use that little hook picker thing from Cricut. But I decided to take out this new tool from Hobby Captain, which is actually supposed to be used for weeding vinyl and kind of like picking up pieces from vinyl. But I found it works awesome for paper crafting, and so that's what I've been using it for because I don't do too much vinyl. But this is the perfect little pen. It has a super sharp little tip to it, and it helps get all those little pieces out of the lace. Now, some of you are going to think I'm crazy for using the real stuff here, but I did just buy 2 ledger books dating from 1895 to 1900 off of eBay, and I really just wanted to use the real stuff. So there's over 600 pages worth of ledger. You can see here Springdale Paper Co. And so I decide I have 600 pages worth of stuff. I think I can use the real stuff because otherwise I'm just going to be holding on to it. I could make copies, but what am I going to do with the real thing? So since I am keeping my Bibles and hoping that my children will look at them in the future, I decided to just do the real thing and use all the pieces that I can. So here I am using the little scrap on the bottom. I think it adds something really fun and interesting to the bottom left-hand corner. And then I'm also going to tuck in that little lace die to this piece. I've definitely found when working with delicate pieces like papers that are over 120 years old and also things like this lace die, the liquid glue is definitely the way to go. The ATG gun and other glue rollers can actually rip the paper if they're super delicate. So if you're working with those kind of pieces, definitely opt for a liquid glue. Now looking at this work card, you're going to see me do the same thing I've done in the last couple months. I dog ear that card because I want more texture and movement on this page. I don't want everything to be flat and stiff, and so I dog ear it and add another piece of paper to the back side. But instead of stapling it like I usually do, I grabbed these brads from Michaels, and I'm actually going to color it because right now it's just a silver. I'm going to color it with some alcohol ink. I thought that I would need a paintbrush, but it actually just suspends on the metal. And so I'm just waiting for it to dry a little bit before I kind of get the tension drop of alcohol ink off of it. And this is in the color Mushroom. And so it has this grungy brown kind of grimy look to it. And I will make a hole in that card and just thread that brad through and then glue down the corner. So I'm actually really happy I picked up that plain pack of brads from Michaels because I have so many different alcohol ink colors and I don't always use them on Yupo paper and stuff, but coloring different metals has been really fun. And so this way I can get whatever color of brad I want and not have to spend the extra money for the different colors. So I move on to this varsity letter and I'm taking the outline of it and adding some gold embossing powder on it. Because I have 2 different things that are gold on the page, I don't want to leave it just at 2. And so I am doing this so that there is a 3rd item that is gold. And this will just be a very subtle little piece of gold on the page since it's around that black flocked paper. It's just like a hint of gold on the page. So before I start gluing everything down into a cluster, I decide I want a little bit more action going on in this background. And so I grabbed the Tim Holtz stencil and I am going to put some embossing glaze down. So all you have to do is add some embossing ink through the stencil and then lay down your glazes. Now these glazes will be see-through. That is something that is different between glazes and just regular embossing powder. And so I'll kind of mix the colors together and then I will make sure that it's fully covered because I had a little bit issue near the top corner. and I will melt that, and it'll kind of just look like something spilled on this page that's liquid, because it does have this kind of glossy look to it. I think it works perfect with this page. So since I have that look in the top corner, I bring it down to the bottom right hand corner because it's looking a little empty, and I also want to bring some cohesiveness to this page. And so I end up using just the extra bit of embossing glaze that I had mixed up and heat set that, and then I'll start working on my layering pieces. Now with this cluster, as I'm laying it down, I'm realizing that I feel like I'm missing a texture, and so I think I'm going to go with fabric. But then I think of this canvas bag because it's a neutral color and it has that little pop of red stitching on it, and so I'm going to add my date with Stays On ink to this canvas bag. Now, if you don't have any use for your older By the Well for God canvas bags that the kit comes in, I find that stamping them is a really fun option because it adds a different texture to your Bible, but it also just looks fun to have something stamped on not paper. And so as I start to glue everything down, I'm going to start on the bottom and layer this word card return down. But once I look over to this verse card, I realize it's missing something. It looks too flat and stiff. And so I found out what it was. I didn't kind of rough up the edges with this one. And so I grab my Tim Holtz scissors, and then I'm going to put a little bit of color down on the edges because I don't want that white core sticking out. And so I will glue that down next and just add all the layering pieces down. I even use the liquid glue for this canvas bag. As long as you hold it down for a couple seconds, it's going to hold it down well. If you are worried about it though, if you don't have time to hold it down for a couple seconds, then you can use Fabri-Tac glue. That is an excellent choice for all things fabric. But with these varsity letters, I have noticed that they are a little bit finicky to glue down. And so I like to use tweezers because the outer edge is so thin. So I will hold the outer edge as I put glue down because you don't want too much glue on this outer edge. You definitely want it to hold, but you don't want it to ooze out over your flock paper. Next, I'm going to just grab this bow clippy from By the Well for God and retie it a different way. And that will be it, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. It means so much to me, guys. And if you haven't already, follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.